Eric eased his hands into his overall pockets as he stared out across the cornfield, the field that he himself had planted. While his neighbors had boasted of their tractors, he had been forced to use a team of horses, and the old horse-drawn plow that Ruth Ellen's father had used year after year. Even his untrained eye could pick out the crooked rows, and yet Ruth Ellen had never said a word about them. She had simply rubbed his aching muscles at the end of each day, and she had always found something to praise him about. As Eric thought back over the past few months, however, he knew that there had been times when she had had to search hard to find something that he had done right. But she always managed to find something. Knee-high by the 4th of July, the phrase swarmed around Eric's mind mockingly. It was already the 2nd day of July, and even he, a son of a billionaire born in the city, could see that his corn crop would not grow enough in 2 days to be half as tall as it should be by the 4th. Eric, Ruth Ellen spoke softly, slipping her arm around his waist. She had approached him so quietly that he had not heard her until she spoke. "What's wrong?" Eric let out his breath and drew his arm around her shoulders. "What isn't wrong, you mean? Ruth Ellen, you know how farms are supposed to be run. You know how this farm used to be run. How can you even ask me what's wrong? Look around you." She was silent for several moments. Eric knew that she was searching her mind for something for which to commend him, and he loved her for it. But even she would not be able to honestly study the farm and see something that he had done right. "All right, I'll tell you what I see." But she was looking at him and not the field. "I see a man who is giving his best. I see a man who has given up everything in order to take care of his family. I see the man that I respect and love. That man, the man that I wouldn't trade for anything on earth." Eric could not hold back his smile and drew her as close to himself as he could. Leaning down, he buried his face in the silken blonde hair and kissed the top of her head. How he loved her! The moments fell away as they held each other. But Eric knew that Ruth Ellen, too, was wondering how they were going to survive the winter without a decent corn crop. His paycheck from the reserves would not begin to pay the bills. "What are we going to do, Ruth Ellen? I'm just not cut out to be a farmer." "I know," she giggled. Pulling enough away from her so that he could study her face, he stared in surprise. Her mouth was carefully held in a sober line, but her eyes were dancing with merriment. "Ruth Ellen!" Collapsing against him, she allowed her laughter to spill out. It was some moments before she was able to speak. Eric was not certain whether to feel insulted or simply join in on her laughter. But the decision was taken from him, as his own laughter insisted on mingling with hers. As they held each other and laughed, Eric felt the cares slip from his shoulders. Finally, they turned back to the house, walking hand in hand. As they neared it, Will, who was playing with Ruth Ellen's clothespins, building something from his imagination, jumped to his feet and ran toward them. Eric let go of Ruth's hand and reached down for the lively 3-year-old. Swinging him up into the air, Eric was rewarded with shrieks of delight. "More, Papa!" Will squealed. Eric repeated the game over and over. When he finally called it to a halt, the cherub face frowned. "Papa's tired," Eric chuckled. "Aren't you?" Will's innocent expression tickled Eric's heart. "No," he replied solemnly. "Let's do something quiet. How about building something with your mama's clothespins?" Satisfied, Will wriggled to the ground and ran ahead of the two, already forgetting his disappointment in the early end to the game of being swung in the air. "Eric," Ruth Ellen began, her laughter gone, "if you didn't have to be a farmer, what would you choose?" Eric shrugged. "I don't know." "Are you sure? Haven't you always wanted to be an officer?" He smiled a little. I am an officer, Ruth Ellen, but only a part-time one. Eric let out his breath in thought. I don't know that I'd really want to be a full-time officer during peace. Not that I want another war. It's just that now, the things I have to order my men to do aren't real. Peacetime soldiers are so different. It's a job that doesn't feel like it's serving a purpose. I know it is, but it doesn't seem like it to me. Do you want to resign your commission? No, we need the money. Is that the only reason? Eric leaned over and kissed her cheek before stepping over to Will. No, he replied, amused over her ability to see through him. He could not imagine being anything but a major, unless he were to become a lieutenant colonel. But he had thought that he had been doing a remarkably good job at hiding that particular ambition. As Ruth Ellen sat down on the ground beside him and Will, he glanced over at her, seeing that she was not planning on letting the matter simply drop. So what do you want to do? What's your dream, Eric? You know I'll share in it. I'll support you all the way. You do know that, don't you? Eric absent-mindedly reached for a clothespin and fingered it for a while before replying. I do know that, but the thing I don't know is what I'd like to do. I don't believe that. Ruth Ellen! Don't get mad, Eric. I'm not accusing you of lying to me, but maybe to yourself. Now tell me, you've been trying to farm for over 9 months, and every day I see in your face that you're dreaming of doing something else, but your love for Will and me makes you put that beautiful dream aside, because you think that what's best for Will and me is for you to be a farmer. But Eric, if God has put a special ambition within you, then it's Will's and my dream too. Now, I'm not talking about selfish ambitions. We all have them. I'm talking about the real thing. Don't you know that if God is leading you, He's leading Will and me in the same direction? He wouldn't lead you without me. You and I are one. Eric's eyes drifted across the beautiful face in front of him. Such loving sincerity was etched there, where only minutes ago rested hilarious merriment. Well, he began cautiously, I've got an idea, but I don't know how it could work out. He paused. She said nothing, simply allowing her loving expression to encourage him to try to put words to his thoughts. I want to serve God, somehow. I'm not saying I couldn't as a farmer, but I don't have any talents at farming. None of it makes any sense to me. He paused and grinned. Just ask anybody in town. They'll tell you. They'll even tell you if you don't ask. It's getting so I sort of dread going to town. There isn't one farmer in the area that hasn't driven by here and laughed at something wrong I've done. I used to get that from my men. I knew they were wrong. But Ruth Ellen, these farmers aren't wrong. I am. Will took Eric's attention away for a few minutes then. Together they began building a tower with clothespins. But finally Eric turned back to Ruth Ellen, who was eyeing him, an amused, knowing look in her eyes. Eric shrugged and continued speaking. I want to do something important. Trouble is, I don't know how to do anything important. You don't call leading soldiers important? Yeah, but the war's over. So now I just don't sense the importance. I know that my men and I could be sent to Korea, especially since these peace talks failed between us and Russia, but Korea has a whole different makeup than the war did. We knew what we were fighting against and who we were delivering, but honestly, Korea is a tangled mess. The people aren't supporting it. How do I lead men to defend causes and issues that are so muddled? There are other kinds of wars, Eric, and God has given you a real talent for taking charge and leading. He doesn't give out talents without expecting us to use them. But it isn't a burden, because He gives us joy in doing the things He's given us the talent to do. You and I both know that farming isn't your talent. You've tried it. You've worked very hard at it, as hard as Billy or Pa ever did. But they enjoyed it, and they were good at it. God even gave them the necessary talents to be farmers. But He's given you talent in leading. Even your Colonel Bolin recognized that years ago. But suppose it takes me from the farm. Eric, she replied quietly, lowering her eyes. She seemed almost to hesitate, which was something she rarely did. You've just assumed that I belong on the farm. Are you so sure I do? Eric leaned back, staring at her in surprise. Well, don't you? For a while, but God's been changing my course too. Lately, I've been feeling restless, just like you. You know, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to do something for God, but the opportunities for some kind of full-time service never opened up for me. I think God has been preparing me all these years to be part of your dream. I think you and I ought to make it part of our regular daily prayers, asking Him to lead us into whatever He's calling us to do. But how will we know? We don't have to worry about that. If He's great enough to create the entire universe, He can easily show us what He wants us to do. It's our hearts He wants. And He has them. Just imagine what God Almighty can do with a willing heart. Suppose that means giving me a talent to be a farmer. Without missing a beat, Ruth Ellen replied. Then He'll also give us peace in our hearts to remain here. And if that's what He chooses, it's because He has a job for us to do here. We might not even realize what that job is, but it's enough to know that He knows. He has a dream for us, Eric, plans, a purpose. The important thing for us to do is to want His will, whatever it is. Before Eric could reply, a car drove into the driveway. Eric and Ruth turned, waiting for the visitor to show himself. Eric stared as the door opened, and the man eased out. Something familiar about the way he moved brought Eric to his feet, and then the man turned and faced Eric. "Jack!" Eric called out. The next moment he was dashing over to him. The two grabbed each other by the shoulders in a bear hug. They had not seen each other since Logan and Lillian had gotten married over 9 months ago. Stepping back, they studied each other for a moment. The smile had died on Jack's lips, and a haunted look crept into his eyes. "What is it, Jack? Are you all right?" Jack shrugged. "Sure, but you're not. Let me help." Jack hesitated. Abruptly, he squared his shoulders in pride, and Eric knew that it was going to be difficult to drag from him whatever was troubling him. "Look at you," Jack muttered. "Where are your soldier boy clothes?" Eric glanced down at his dirt-smeared shirt and his overalls. "They're underneath these farmer boy clothes," he chuckled. Jack eased into a small grin. "By the looks of things, the two don't seem to fit," he replied, nodding at the dwarfed cornfield with its crooked rows. Ellen stepped up then and greeted Jack with such warmth in her voice that Jack visibly relaxed. "You'll stay for dinner," she added. "We'll be eating in half an hour. If you don't have any other plans, would both love to have you stay overnight. Longer if you can spare the time. Eric's missed you boys." Jack nodded, but he seemed too stunned to reply until after Ruth Ellen had excused herself and returned to where Will sat playing. "She sure knows how to make someone feel welcome," Jack finally said. Eric smiled and nodded. "She does, and you're always welcome here, Jack. Come on, let's take a look at that miserable cornfield." Jack chuckled and fell in step with Eric. As they walked along, however, the cornfield was the furthest thing from either of their minds. "It isn't what you expected, Jack, is it?" "How'd you know?" Without giving Eric a chance to reply, he added, "What am I saying? Of course you know, Eric." He sighed. "When I got home, they treated me like some kind of hero. But then, the next thing I know, everybody expects me to just pick up from where I'd left off before the war. Those that didn't go over there, they're just so concerned about things that don't even matter. And those who were over there, Eric, I'm the only one from my town to come back in one piece. They're so bitter." "And you're not?" Jack slowly shook his head. "Not like that. I don't fit in with them, but I don't fit in with the civilians either.